Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of my How to Practical Spirituality and Mysticism series. In this episode, we talk with Darin Dillinger, who is a psychic medium astrologer, about birth charts, what they are, and how we can use them. We focus on the 12 houses and learn about what Chiron is. So join us now for a trip out into the stars. Hi, Darin. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. So we are going to be talking about birth charts today, and I just want to get into it. So what is a birth chart, and why do we want to, what do we want to do? Tell us all about it.
Well, birth charts are very interesting. It is basically a map of the day you were born. It's specifically the time. You don't have to have the time to do your birth chart just because a lot of people don't have their time of their birth chart. We have a natal chart, which is what I do, but we also have a solar return chart, which is a solar return chart is on the day of your birthday. Like this year, my birthday, I was a Libra moon and a Libra rising. So that's how I'm going to act for the next year. It's based on where you are currently at that time. Okay. So basically your natal chart is like a blueprint of your life. My favorite girls that have taught me a lot of things, the Astro twins, have always said the birth charts are a tool, not a rule. Because a lot of people believe that they're set in stone for having a bad relationship because their Venus is in like Capricorn. No, it's just something that you know, that you should know, so you're aware of it, so you can work on it. A birth chart is all about, here's what my obstacles, here's my challenges, here's what I'm good at, and here's how I can work through them to transcend from point A to point B. Because we also have a transcendent chart where we transcend from one sign to another house. So I want to talk about the birth chart and their 12 houses, because if you understand the 12 houses, then you understand how like a planet acts. Because imagine a birth chart as your movie. So we have Derek the movie. Okay, we have 12 scenes in this movie. Okay, each house has a theme. Okay, so that is how that's the setting of the movie. So let's just say your setting is in the 4th house, which is the house of your mom and your family structure. So we know it's going to go back to your childhood. Okay, and then we have the actor, which is the planet. Okay, if it's Jupiter, it's the big planet of like expansion. Okay, and then we have how they're going to act, which it could be your Jupiter could be in Sagittarius. So you're going to be very childlike. So it's like basically that's how a birth chart works. You have the house, the theme, you have the actor, the planet, and then you have the emotion on how they act, which is the sign.
That's awesome. I think that's really cool to put it in that way and to understand, like, I like
It's
how you
very
put
basic.
that. And yeah, I like how you put that and broke that down so people can
We also
understand.
have asteroids. And the 4 asteroids, I call them the Golden Girls, because they're four women, 4 goddesses from Greek. There's Juno, Ceres, Pallas, and Vesta, and each one represents a golden girl. Like I could get into that. Find me, I'll explain that. We also have a Chiron, which is your wound, which is like triggered by your family, any parental figure. So we all have a Chiron, we all have a wound to work through. We have 4 major points we have the Ascendant, which is how we see ourselves, how people see us, how people see us in the outside world. Like I may be a Scorpio sun, but my Aquarius is rising. My rising is my Aquarius. So people are going to think that I'm eclectic, I'm eccentric, I'm weird, I'm like off the wall. Okay. Across from that, on your 7th house, the 7th house is the ruler of relationships. It is that descendant, which is called your descendant. My descendant is Leo. So my lover, that's the 7th house of relationship, I tend to be more drawn to people that are like Leos, or I tend to have a lot of Leo friends in my life. Okay. Then we have the MC, which is like the kind of career you should get, which is between the 9th and 10th house. And then we have the IC, which is your deep personal family heritage. And a lot of the times your IC, like I just learned this is amazing. Your IC is, there will be someone in your family that has the same IC, and you will resemble them. You will physically look like them. And then you'll know, like they'll have, like, it'll be like a karmic thing where you work through it. And that's between your 3rd and 4th house.
Wow, that's like, so it like gets really detailed if people were to
Oh
learn
yeah,
about
it's more
this.
detailed than this.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
I sure. And so why do people want to learn about these birth charts, and why
Because
would they want to?
I think it's most interesting because I've been doing astrology since I was 9 years old. Like I remember my first astrology book. Um, I've been a psychic medium since I was 4, but I've been doing astrology since I was 9. So people need to know this because, or should want to know this because things happen in our lives, and we're like, that makes no sense. Why I act like this? This is like, why did this happen? And then all of a sudden, you look at your birth chart and you're like, oh my god, like, yeah, that happened. Like a lot of people like nowadays, like it's becoming very trendy, birth charts are, but they're not understanding the why it's trending. Okay. So when you're 27 years old to 30 years old, you're having a Saturn returns. It's like people, like you often hear people say, well, when I was 27 to 30, I really changed. Like I totally changed overnight, because Saturn does that to you. Saturn teaches you lessons and you come out of it totally different. You have one every, what, 28 years, I think. Then we have a Jupiter return, which no one talks about. But the only reason why I talk about it is that's your lucky year. I mean, that's the year of like things are rolling for you. And like sometimes if you don't let it roll right, it will take everything away from you. My 35th year, it took everything away from me. And I had to but it took everything that was bad away from me, because Jupiter is the planet of luck and good fortune. So it takes everything away from you. So it replaces things that are good for you. Like, so every little planet has a special nick to it. Does that make sense?
Yes. So this is very interesting because I'm just reflecting on my own personal experience, because 35-ish, I think it was 35, but it was right around there somewhere, is when
Yeah.
I fully accepted my mission and what I'm supposed to do and my gifts and everything, is when I said, okay. Um, and so that was like, it's just interesting that it does correlate with that decision of everything kind of like turning over, and having to let go of a bunch of things in order to be open to all the things that I was supposed to do. So
Right.
it's interesting. I'm just kind of just showing what I was
Well, do you
doing
know what
this.
your
So,
Jupiter is in, Derek? Do you know what your Jupiter's in? I don't have your chart right in front of me. I have your chart, but I don't have it, because Jupiter tends to be from like 34 to 36, like, because it depends on the age, like the sign of Jupiter. It
yeah.
depends. Like mine was exactly at 35, so that's why. I think that the most interesting thing is because a lot of people freak out because everyone thinks everything's blaming it on Mercury retrograde. Everyone's like, Mercury retrograde, I'm bad. And I'm like, no, there's other things. Like your Uranus, like right now we just went through a Uranus Saturn conjunction, which is a bitch. No, I'm just like, it's like Uranus is the planet of rebellion, Saturn is the planet of rules. So when they conjunct, which there's like terminology. That's why there's more to a birth chart. You have conjunctions, you have oppositions, you have trions, and you have sextiles. So they all mean something different, and they also interact. So like just imagine two planets. Like let's just say you're usually Saturn and Uranus and your birth charts are in the same house, in the same sign, because they travel so close together. So when your Saturn and your Uranus is like, let's just say your Saturn and Uranus is in the 5th house, Derek. And let's just say it's in the 5th house. The 5th house, for all you guys don't know, I will explain all 12 houses, but the 5th house is fun, creativity, childlike beauty, and animals. Okay. So when I read people, I use my gifts, my intuitive gifts, to read people, because every house has like 7 different things that it could be. But when you specifically read a person, you're like, instinctively, I instinctively know what that means. So for you, Uranus and Saturn would come in and be like, okay, new ways of having fun, new ways of expressing yourself. So you would go in, Uranus would be the planet of rebellion, the planet of like, I'm going to destroy this and come up with different methods, like the unusual. It's ruled by Aquarius. So you might go in and take like a song or like a music and like add like different kinds of music to it. And Saturn is the planet of lessons and karma. So Saturn is going to come up with new rules, new structures, and how it's done. You might create a whole new line of music just because Uranus and Saturn is in the 5th house. I'm lucky because when I was born, my Saturn and Uranus was separated. So, but my Saturn and Uranus being separated, my Saturn is in the ninth house. Ninth house is of higher education and philosophy and unconventional religion and travel. Because so that means my Saturn is, I've got lessons to learn. I've got lessons to learn in education. I've got lessons to learn about travel. And when I just like learned, I got really into astrology about 3 or 4 years ago. So before that, I lived in Korea. I one day up and traveled to Korea and moved in 24 hours for no reason for 6 months. You know what I mean? Like that's a Saturn karmic thing. And it happened on my Saturn returns. So it was right then when my Saturn was returning, and I was like, okay, Darin, you've got to change. My Uranus is in the 11th house, and the 11th house is of community, friendship, and organization. So basically it's like AA, it's all your close friends, and it's like all these organizations that you belong to. Okay. It also now has been linked to social media because it's kind of like the techie, Aquarians are very techie. So my Uranus is there. So I have unconventional ways of having friends. So unconventional ways for me would be like, because my Venus is there too, which is your love specter. And I tend to make my relationships with my friends very unconventional. So I love my friends like I am I'm like a emotional relationship with them. Does that make sense? Like it's like a very deep rooted relationship.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because once you know your birth chart, once you know the houses, and once you know how these planets are interacting with each other, you can figure out, hey, I hear a lot of people be like, well, I'm screwed with love because my Venus is in Capricorn. And I'm like, no, you're not. It's just that you have to like learn, like if nothing's permanent in life, we're all transcending, we're all evolving. And that's your birth chart does the same thing. You know, like right now I am currently a Sagittarius because I've transcended. I've done all my work as a Scorpio. So I might come off as a Sagittarius. So my Sagittarius, like usually you go from one, like, so you were born in Cancer, okay? And you're doing all the work and you're around my age. So you're a Leo right now. You're looking for the like, you're very prideful. You're very like leader, like you're very like, I can take care of people. And you get like a lot of attention because, you know, like just this naturally comes to you. So basically, like once you realize what's happening in your life, you realize that it's kind of like a reflection. It's kind of like, oh, you know, because I'm not the type of horoscope astrologer person that wakes up every morning and reads my, you know, horoscope. Because the key thing to do this is if you're very skeptic about your birth chart and your horoscope and all, always read your birth chart or your horoscope for that day, that night. So you can say, this actually did happen to me. This actually makes sense, and reflect on it. I don't like to it's kind of like setting yourself up for disaster if you read your horoscope in the morning and says, today you might get into a car wreck. And I'm like, really? Fuck it.
Yeah. That's what I do with numbers also, like numerology for the month. I'll go and I'll look at the end of the month. I'll be like, wait, what? Because I forget. Like I just stay present that I forget. So it's good to look back and go, how did it work out for last month? This number, whatever it was.
That's so weird that you say that because I normally don't do numerology. And I've been getting into numerology. And the first thing this morning, I was laying in bed and I was like, okay, it's the 1st of March. This month isn't it a 5 month? It's a 7 month. And I was like, okay. And I don't know anything. I'm very new to numerology. So like, you've got me turned on to numerology actually. So I'm like, oh, okay. So, because I only know one thing, but the cool thing about numerology is it also corresponds with birth charts.
Right.
You know, everything has a synchronicity here. Like you have feng shui, which is synchronized into birth charts. Because it's like the north, east, south, like the houses are broken up to 4 quadrants. And so they actually, one is like the yin, one's the yang, you know? And then we have the numerology. And then we have, it's so weird because I personally made a birth chart, like to explain everything to people. And it's huge. And of course it's rainbow because I'm very bright and eccentric, like an Aquarius rising. So like, I would just love just to get into the houses so we can just like explain to you what the houses are. And just because when you look at a birth chart, just because that there's nothing in that house. Okay, let's just say I have nothing in my 7th house. I have no planets. That means there's no actively actors in that house. Doesn't mean that you don't have something there. Doesn't mean that there's not that energy. My 7th house, okay, so my 7th house is the Leo. So my 7th house is love and relationships. It's in Leo. So when I find love, it's like all or nothing. It is like passion, but there's nobody actively in that scene. Right. So it's just like a scene. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So don't freak out that there's no planets in one house.
Sure. So the most important thing to understand first is that we have the 12 houses.
Right.
And then the second thing is to understand, and we find out from our birth chart what planets might be in those houses. And so, okay, so what are the 12 houses?
Okay, so we have the first house, which is your ascendant house, okay? And it is the house of self, your ego, the house of all about who you are in this world, how you're going to show the world, okay? It is naturally ruled by Aries, okay? It's naturally ruled by Aries. So you start at 1, which is Aries, and then you work your way around to Pisces, which is 12. So just because you're Aries, like it has Aries energy, that house has Aries energy, okay? So, but my house is filled with Aquarius. So it's kind of like, how does the Aquarian act against the Aries energy? Okay. I don't have any planets right there right now. I mean, like currently I don't have any planets in my Aquarius. Okay. But natally, I have nothing in my first house. But when it transcends, because we have a transcending chart every day, everything's in my first house right now. Like almost everything, like on February 11th, when we had 7 planets and things in the 11th house, it was all in my first house. I was like feeling that day. It was all about me that day. So we moved to the second house. Second house is ruled by Taurus. Second house is money. Think of a Taurus. Like when you think of the houses, you kind of can think of the sign that it's actually associated with. So if you forget, you're like, oh, okay. Second house is money, financial security, stability. And it's how you show up to this world. It is your self-awareness. Because your first house is saying, this is me, but how do I show up to this world? Okay. Then we go from there, we go to the third house, which is Gemini. And think of a Gemini. What do Geminis do? They love to talk. They love to chit chat. Okay. And there's 2 of them, siblings. Okay. Because it's Gemini. It is your house of siblings too. Communication and siblings. Okay. It also kind of deals with technology too, because it's ruled by Mercury. Okay. Because every planet, every sign is ruled by a planet. It can get really detailed, but just for the name's sake, think of Gemini, talkative, 3rd house. 4th house is Cancer. Cancer is ruled by the moon. So when Cancer is ruled by the moon is the mother figure. So this is the house of tradition, family roots, and your mother. Okay. So this house is totally all about how you build your foundation, your inner self. It's like the moon is your emotion. And like, so when you say, Mike, I have a Cancer moon, I actually have a Cancer moon. So my emotions are really deep, very nurturing, very psychic. All the water signs have, if you're a water moon, you're very psychic usually, or intuitive. We go to the 5th house of Leo. The 5th house of Leo is the fun house. It's like, let's party, because it's all about creativity, fun. I think it's more like, I like to include music into that. I don't think it necessarily is, but music's very fun. Anything that's bringing you fun, it's very childlike. And it also pertains to pets, okay? The 6th house is Virgo. Virgos are very, very like schedule-based, do this, but they're also healers. This is the house of service to others. This is the house of health and fitness and wellness and how your health is. We move to the 7th house of love and relationships, which is, wait a minute. Yeah, we move into the house of love and relationships, the 7th house. And the 7th house is ruled by Libra. And a lot of people don't know this about Libras, but Libras are one of those signs that can never be single, never. And Libras, or if you have like a Libra moon, a Libra rising, a Libra Venus, you have a hard time being alone, because Libras, even though they're the scale, like they're like, they're supposed to be balanced. They're the most insecure, indecisive people. No, Leos are most insecure, but these are the most indecisive, because their whole purpose in life is to find balance in their life. That's why they're represented through a scale. So this is like all your relationships. The house that I'm not the most familiar with, which I should totally be familiar with, is the 8th house, because the 8th house is ruled by Scorpio, which is my sun sign. Scorpio, this house pertains to other people's finances, which is kind of weird. It's like how you handle other people's money. It also is dealing with death, transformation, and sex. This is the house of sex, like, because a lot of people put everything together. Like, it's a relationship. It's in the 7th house, and that my sex life is really good. Then I'm like, what's your 8th house? Because your 8th house is the sex house. It's about marriage. It's about legal agreements, if that makes sense. So like anything that if you think of a Scorpio, it's very mysterious. It's very like sexual. So that's what the 8th house is. It's a lot of the death and transformation. Like when I say death, I don't mean like, oh, you have something there, that means you're gonna die. You know what I mean? It's death of who you are currently, if that makes sense. Then we have the 9th house, which is the house of travel. I like to say the occult, because it's a non-conventional religion. If you go back to like the 3rd house, like, because the 9th house and the 3rd house are like right below each other. The 3rd house I've read is actually conventional religion, like Catholicism, Christianity, like, and then so you go the opposite to the 9th house, and it's like Buddhism, Hinduism, like it's all different other ways of religion.
I see.
It's also the house of travel. It's ruled by Sagittarius. Travel's huge with Sagittarius. They can't sit still. Okay. Then we have the house of the 10th house, which is work, fame, and recognition. A lot of celebrities, if you look at their birth charts, actually have their sun in the 10th house, or they actually have a Jupiter in their 10th house, because Jupiter makes everything big. I think Oprah and Lady Gaga specifically have a 10th house placement, because that makes everything big for them. So you can, like, if you have a big fame, like if you're famous, you look at your 10th house. Or if you think that you have a desire to be famous, look at your 10th house. If you have good work ethics, look at your 10th house. Capricorn rules entrepreneurship. It's all about business. So there you go. That's where that is. The 11th house is of friendships, ruled by Aquarius, organizations. We covered that. The 12th house is very interesting. The 12th house is something that a lot of people, a lot of astrologers, a lot of people that read birth charts are like, ooh, the 12th house, you know? The 12th house is the unseen things, the mental illness, psychic abilities, anything that you can't see on surface level. Like, I looked at your birth chart, and your birth chart, I think I told you this, it has the North Node. And your North Node, with the North and South Node, is your karma and your destiny. You can always get your karma, which is your 6th house for you. So you can always get your health and fitness, helping other people. It's naturally for you. But for you to really, really like find your key in life, you have to work towards your North Node. Your North Node is in the 12th house of psychic abilities, and it is in Leo. So you're supposed to be the leader. So this makes perfect sense, Derek, why your old past was the fitness, and you can still incorporate it, and you still have service of others, but you're being a service of others now through your psychic abilities, through your channeling, through your meditations, through anything that's not seen. And mental illness, even with your clubhouse, like, you know, you're helping people with your North Node. So you're finding, like, you have found the route, you found your way on the road. Stay on your road, don't get sidetracked.
Thank you.
That's the 12 houses. Oh yeah. So the North Node and South Node, as I forgot to mention, that's your karma and your destiny. Everyone has one. Like my Chiron is in the house of my mom, and my North Node is in my house of my mom. So that means, which is kind of cool. I'm interested in this so much as like ancestral birth charts, because I have all my relatives. My mom has the same Chiron as me. So she had a bad relationship with her mother. And I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know my mom and my grandma's birth chart until I looked them up, which was like a year ago. So I have the same Chiron as my mom. My grandma has the same Chiron as my mom. So it's a generational thing that I'm supposed to be here on Earth to break this trend, because I'm the only boy that has God in it. So, like, of course, being gay, like, I'm not having kids. So guess what? My kids, I'm not gonna have kids. So it ends with me. But for it to end with me, I have to go back and heal all these past generational wounds. So it's kind of fun because I've learned what my mom and my grandma went through as a child from their parents. So it's kind of like I now have to see how they act. And what I learned about this is, and I used the birth chart to do this, is because, and I was reading something, when I found out I was reading something, and it says, the reason why some of our wounds are happening is, like for me, my wound with my mom didn't have the mental health, like there wasn't therapy growing up for my mom. Therapy did not exist in her timeline. But so now a lot of our wounds are easier to fix because we have the accessibility. So when you find out where your wound is, you're like, oh, this makes sense. Because so many people that I've read, they're like, how did you know this about me and my mom and dad? And I'm like, your Chiron just told me. It's not like, they're like, yeah, but I've never had that before. So it's kind of like, that's why I believe that the spiritual community can all work together. Like healers can work with astrologers, because, hey, if I see your wound is here, I know a healer that can help you here. Or, you know, if there's something with like Chirons also deal with past lives too. So if I tell you, Derek, I have a Chiron in the 4th house, is it something that we can go through a past life and see that this is a trend in my life that I've carried, and I'm here to finish the trend? Like it might not have been a wound from my past life, but it was something that was happening continuous, and now this life is time to fix it. It's time to deal with this wound.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's kind of like a road map, and then you can choose like the adventure on the road map. So it's
yeah,
not
it's like I said, it's a rule, it's a tool, not a rule. Your birth chart's a rule, not a tool.
And so what is the best step in order to I guess you can go get a birth chart reading done, right?
Right. But the easiest thing to do is, okay, so I love this. I'm like, I go and meet random strangers. I have an ability just to look at you and tell you your moon, by the way. That's just a gift of mine. But if you really want to know, like Google, like literally, like seriously, like I will be like, Derek, your birthday's this date on this time, moon phase. And it'll tell me that moon. Like if I don't know your time of birth, I will know your moon, because the moon changes every 2 days. So I just type in that date, know your moon. The quickest way to do it is use the internet, use your knowledge. Like, you know, you don't have to, like, people come to do birth charts to like reading so they can feel like it's explained to them, because there's tons of internet websites that will explain it a different way than the other one. But like the thing is, so if you want like an individualized, like personal reading, go to an astrologer. If you just want to know, like, my Saturn is in the 3rd house, and then you can like Google Saturn in the 3rd house with this sign. It's very confusing to look at a birth chart when you do that, though. I will tell you that when I first learned, because they'll break it down in 2 ways. They'll say Saturn in the 3rd house is this, okay? So it'll be like this, okay? And like the first paragraph will tell you what that is. Then the second paragraph will say, having your Saturn in like Aquarius in the 3rd house is like, but it won't tell you what it's like, how it pertains to the Aquarian. So you kind of have to know how the Aquarius acts to incorporate in the 3rd house without saying it. So it's kind of confusing.
Well, that's why I think it's important that, yeah, we can get that information by plugging things in. But like when I first did that and somebody told me to do it, I just stared at it and I was like,
it's confusing.
It's confusing.
It's like here's the thing, like there's astrology is ever changing. So I'm learning every single day. Like I put it on a mission for like at least once a week. I learn something new.
And that's why I think it's good to go to see somebody that will do the birth chart, but then be a psychic reader too, because it's just like numerology too, where you're doing numbers, but it's a reading. So the person that's doing it is picking up on psychic information and doing an actual psychic reading. It's not just like, this planet is in this house and there you go, and it means this. It's more of a psychic reading where you're tuned into what the information
is. Because like, if I looked at you and I was like, okay, Derek, I'm going to like this you don't mind if I tell them your top 3, do you? Okay. No. Derek's top 3 is he's a Cancer sun. So he's very emotional. He's very connected. He wants to take care of a lot of people. His Scorpio moon, he has this mysterious side to him, and don't cross the Scorpio moon, because Scorpio moons, literally, they will look at you and they'll be like, you're lying. And they won't even have to tell you you're lying. They'll like just tell you. But he's very structured, and he's very a healer. He's a helper because he's a Virgo rising. No, a Leo rising. Sorry. Take that back. He's a Leo rising. Sorry, I got someone else in my mind. He's a Leo rising. So he's the leader of the pack. Okay. So you're very leader, and you have, like, I'm not going to lie, Leo risings and Leo moons are good looking. All Leos are good looking, by the way, but Leo moons and Leo risings are different. Whereas a Leo sun wants the attention. I deserve this attention. Leo moons and Leo risings are like, why is everyone looking at me? Like, how did I get the attention? Like, why is the spotlight on me? And I didn't even try, because it's that something about their magnetic energy. So when I look at Derek, I'm going to be like, okay, what plays out? Like, if I have, like, Derek is a double water sign, so he's very gifted. So that's what, like, when you have a double water sign, it's in the top 3, it's very, like, you're spot on. Usually it's your sun and your moon. I don't think rising's too much, because rising's just how, like, you present yourself to the outside world. And Derek, like, so you would come out as very nurturing, okay? But, like, don't cross Derek because he's a Scorpio moon, because Scorpio moons will cut you off high and dry. But you also have to take care of other people. So when you find this out, it's a great thing, but it doesn't mean that defines you. That's what I really try to stress. Like, I mean, it's fun in games when you're talking to someone, you're like, well, you're acting like this because your moon's in Libra or something, you know, but deep down, there's something deeper than that sign, deeper than that. So I don't want to, like, you know, I literally do it all the time. I'm like, I can't hang out with you because you're a Virgo moon and I can't handle structure right now. Because there's one thing that I do want to tell you guys that it's very interesting about birth charts, and very few people actually have this. So you're kind of like a gift to the world if you do. I don't know, Derek, if you have yours. I know that one of our mutual friends, she has one. And I was talking to her last night, and she's like, oh my God, this is so me. It's called a stellium, okay? A stellium is when you have 3 or more planets in the same sign, and necessarily not the same house, because my stellium is in Sagittarius. So when you have 4 major planets or 3 major planets or a lot of planets in one house, it trumps it. It's kind of like playing chess. It's like you trump all the other signs. So basically, I come off as a Sagittarius. And if you look at Sagittarius, you're like, oh, that's Darin. Because Sagittarians are fun, adventurous. They're very chatty. They're very blunt. And they get bored very easy. So I literally come off more as a Sagittarius because I have 4 planets in Sagittarius. So you, I don't think you have a stellium, but I know people that have stelliums in all houses. Like, my stellium expands. Like, a lot of times stelliums are at, like, the 3rd house only, but sometimes stelliums can transcend from one house to another. Does that make sense? Like, as long as it's in the same sign, like, you can't have a stellium in 2 houses, but not the same sign. Yeah. It doesn't make sense, but it has to be in the same sign. So like, you have to, like, it gets down to the nitty gritty. And like, I wanted to say this kind of funny. So I often, my mind as an Aquarius always wants answers. I want answers. I need answers. And I'm very inquisitive. So I was like, is there a gay planet? Is there a planet that will make you gay? And I actually, to answer this, because my name is the Queer Sarah on social media. So I pertain to do a lot of pop culture stuff and fun stuff. So Aquarius was actually a water bearer. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not going to butcher it on this, but he was Zeus's lover. Okay. So he was Zeus's lover, and Hera, his wife, who is Juno, the comet, she found out about it. So Zeus took him and threw him into the sky so he could always watch over him. And he was the lover, the gay lover of Zeus. So he is known as the gay planet. And Aquarians rule Uranus. So if you have a high placement in Uranus, that's a gay planet. Or I don't like to call a planet gay. I would like to call the planet very, like, unconventional. It's like like unconventional ways. Like if you have an unconventional religion, if you have an unconventional way of romantic life or unconventional job, look at your Uranus, because your Uranus is very unconventional. It's new ways, new structures.
Yeah. Wow, I mean, it makes sense that things would influence like that and create that, like, and that we would choose it as we came in, you know,
we went through a stage. Okay, last year we were in Capricorn year, tradition. Our Jupiter and our Saturn were in Capricorn. Okay, so that means structure, tradition, blah blah blah, like all these things. Look what happened last year globally. Okay, because Jupiter and Saturn are outer planets, so they control outer world things. They're not inner planets. They control government. They control like things like all that's encompassing the world. We went to those two signs into Aquarius. And Aquarius is all about new ways, new structures. Aquarians are all about community. So now we are changing, we're seeing as one. You know, what happens to one person, look like if you don't wear your mask or you cough on people or whatever you do, you know, when the virus affects one person, it affects all of us, basically. It's like saying that. We also are seeing a lot of non-binary, non-traditional sexual stuff. So that's an Aquarius type of way. So when you look at the planets and you see what's happening in the world, like last year, we had a Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn conjunction. And guess what? Jupiter and Pluto together alone would explode the virus, because Pluto's the unseen things, Jupiter expands things. It was in the 12th house of diseases. And when it hit, when it hit in America, it expanded it. And then we had 3 conjunctions during the course of last year. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying, oh my God, look at the birth chart, it's going to tell you what's going on. You know what I mean? But it's interesting. It's something to put like, you know, like adding, like, here's your meal, add some salt to it. That the birth chart's the salt, and it just like seasons it.
So, I mean, it sounds like it's a good idea, not just, I mean, from personal experience, not to just get a birth chart done unless you know what you're looking at or talking about. So it's best to get a reading done, and you do those readings. And so if people wanted to get a reading with you, how do they contact you?
I have a website, but personally just go through my DMs. I have 2 Instagrams. The Instagram that I usually use is the la.darin_429, because like, I just DM me. I mean, like, I usually do birth charts, and I ask you what type of birth chart you're looking for, because like some people only want to see what their love life is like. Some people only want to know what their career is. Sometimes they want to know, what is my wound? What do I need to work through? You know what I mean? So like each birth chart, like, be kind of particular when you ask, you know what I mean? Like, I often make pop culture references. So like, I also tend to relate to the person, because like if I'm reading you, I'm not going to talk about, you know, something that you're totally not interested in. So like I said, when you learn what the houses are, you know, it's kind of like you kind of can map it together yourself, but it's easier just to have someone do it for you.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So I'll put the links in this description, but that, yeah, I would want to have someone that would read it be able to tell me, rather than trying to just go.
I have a problem where I just like meet people and I'll be like I'll just like, give me your birth chart number, because it's kind of like, I'm not off the record, but this is kind of funny. I feel like it's like a nude. It's like sending a dick pic or a booby pic or whatever, because when you get this person's information, you know everything about them if you know how to read it.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's something, it's very personal. So like, I know people that won't share their birth chart information. Like we mutually have friends that won't share birth chart information with me, because they want to keep it. They know the power of a birth chart. So like, when you go find, like, you don't have to find me. When you find an astrologer though, make sure that you feel connected to them, because you're trusting them with something very deep. This is your whole life.
Right. And that's a very good tip for everybody, to have that kind of relationship. Now, what would you like everybody to walk away with today that was watching?
That your birth chart, like, sorry, just give me 1 second. Your birth chart is not your destiny. It is not set in stone. If you know your birth chart, if you're like, I don't like there might be a reason why you don't feel like a Cancer. You know what I mean? Because you might have had other placements. You might have a stellium. You might have it. So don't think that when you know your birth chart, like when you see it or anything, that it's you're destined to be famous. You know, like it's kind of like the law of attraction. You have to put in the work in your birth chart to make things happen for you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
about.
you.
I'm glad you went over the 12 houses and what Chiron is, because I've heard of that, you know, and I don't dive into astrology as much and
No,
study that as much, and I leave that up to
we
my
we also
astrologer friends.
we also have like there's a lot of other things that we have like 8 asteroids. I just like to talk about the 4, but there's also one that I would love to share with you like off the record because yours is interesting. It is Lilith, and Lilith is the siren that was left. Her lover was stranded her on a freaking island and she's screaming. So this is the dark side of your moon. This is your dark side. Like, so you might be a Scorpio sun, a Scorpio moon, but you might have like a freaking like Capricorn Lilith, meaning you're going to go cut someone's throat off, like you're going to cut someone's neck. You don't have a Capricorn, a Lilith, but like, so it's very interesting to see how this works. So like, and it's okay. Like I'm not a natural healer. I don't do numerology very much. So that's why I have friends like you. So it's like what I said, we all play off of each other. That's what I want to learn. Like that, like we are like, I'm so grateful that you do these things because we all can connect with someone that can help us on our next journey or our next step.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So hopefully in a future segment, we can talk about something more like besides the 12, we can go more into the asteroids or talking about things that are
I would
more
love to talk about the
integrate.
planets. Like the planets each represent something too.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
So because the planets are like, do you remember I said that the planets are actors? The planets are also telling you like the sun is I am.
Yeah.
So I am a blank, blank, blank. What am I am acting as, you know? Like it'd be quite interesting. You'd have to do some work because numerology plays in the key with the signs too. So like, oh, what's the number 5? Number 5, you know, like numerology number 5 is associated with Leos. So like it's like, how does that intertwine with Leos? Like Leos are very fun and active. And I know this much about 5s. 5s are very adventurous. So it's kind of how it correlates.
Yeah, for sure. Like it does. It does. So that'd be cool to talk about in the future. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and
thank you so much,
educating everybody on the 12 houses and more. And also letting people in on my personal journey within
because
the cosmos.
you like your journey is amazing. Like literally like and it's really cool because you're not someone that's a follower of your birth chart. Like you don't like you don't look at it. You didn't know. Right. And then when I told you all this, you're like, oh, well, that did actually happen to me. Like, or that. So it's kind of nice to reflect on, hey, the planets are working in your favor.
Yeah, sure. I agree. Well, thank you so much. And we thank everybody who was watching and listening.
Thank you guys so much.
Yep.
Happy
Have a
March.
wonderful day. Yep. Happy March. All right. Bye, everybody.